really enjoyed. And so Geshe will be presenting the Geluk view of emptiness next Sunday. So we'll take a pause from this text of stages of meditation and be focusing on Lama Tsongkhapa's view on emptiness. As we go through, we will go back the following week to the stages of meditation and also our Chakra Samvara commentary for those with Anuttara Yoga initiation. That will be on the 22nd, Saturday, the 22nd of this month of February. And then the 23rd will be the last Sunday, which will be on stages of meditation before Geshe and I go away. Geshe will be teaching his students in Europe, in the Netherlands and France, and that will be for 3 weeks. We just confirmed some really excellent events for those 3 weeks when Geshe and I are away. We have Paula Chichester is going to lead a White Tara meditation that should be great. Deki Lee is going to speak about transformative mindfulness. And we also have an Australian nun, Venerable Tenzin Chudrin, and she is going to give a talk on death and dying from a Buddhist perspective. She's done hospice work in a Buddhist context for many, many years. And in case you're missing Geshe, you will have your Geshe fix as well, because we will prepare 2 videos to be uploaded. One video is going to be a meditation of Avalokiteshvara and Om Mani Padme Hum, which will be uploaded for people to watch on Chudradhuchan, the Day of Miracles, and on Losar, which is the 28th of this month, I believe. Geshe will upload a video about the importance of the accumulation of merit and how we can accumulate merit during these holy days. I don't know if it's a bit hissy. Maybe it's just because I'm holding my microphone too close. So is that what it is?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So though that's kind of how our program is looking. As you can see, there will be kind of plenty to follow while Geshe and I are away. We'll also keep you posted as to any of the things in the Netherlands that you can follow, because there are probably going to be ways to follow some of those. When we're in France, if you speak French, just you can email me, and I will let you know how to connect with that. And I see that we are now 1 minute past the hour, so I won't take any more of your time. Please grab yourself a cup of tea or coffee. I'll invite Geshe down, and we'll get started. Great to see everyone. Yeah. Sorry, like my glasses are probably going to be coming on and off a lot because I have a new prescription and it's weird adjusting to it. Odosogi. Tetsuna.
Yeah,
Can you hear Geshe all right? Okay, great. And you can hear me okay? Okay. Yeah, it's far away, so hopefully you can't hear my breath so much. Okay.
So
first of all, Tashi Dele, greetings to everybody. Geshe hopes that everything is going well and that all of you are happy. So in terms of our task of our work together today, it is related to that most important facet of ourselves, which is the mind. And it is about how to activate that mind and how to improve that mind in a stable way.
So of
course, this is a process of recognizing within the mind those states which are unwholesome and trying to reduce, decrease those as much as possible. Similarly, recognizing our positive qualities, the wholesome mental states, and trying to improve those, and through practice, eventually bring them to their perfection.
So
of course, it's said that the mind in its fundamental state is something that is neutral, which means like it is like a white piece of a cloth. And it is also something that is powerful because in its fundamental nature, it is pure luminosity.
So
a really important thing here too. From the Buddhist perspective, when we think about our enemies, we often tend to look externally, right? Thinking that those enemies are outside ourselves. But from the Buddhist perspective, it is really important to keep in mind. Sorry. Oops. Not just from the Buddhist perspective, from the honest perspective, from the true perspective. From the true perspective, actually, though, of working with our mind, those enemies are something that are internal, right? The unwholesome mental states.
So
it's a little bit difficult because it's a profound thing to understand, but this is the reality, right? That the real enemy is something within us. It's not some external person, animal, other kind of sentient being or situation that we can point to. It's important to keep that in mind. So ideally, what we try to do is to activate the potential of our mind, to train our mind so that we can develop this feeling of closeness with every single sentient being, right? That's where we are trying to go. And then we'll see that actually there is no kind of cause of the problem or outer enemy that we could definitively point to. If you can think like that, the benefit is a stable mind, right? Sarumaru-sana? And on the basis of establishing this way of thinking, then we are not creating or adding to meaningless problems, right? Because of that mistaken thought.
다 이나 깨자 모노 근데 와서 다 이나 영어로서 베트 다 메바레베스나 싱이네 베자도나 난주 다 좀바 토그 근데 그래서 다 베마렘 다 요아레.
However, we can't say we are free of enemies at all. Otherwise, one of the kind of states that people try to reach in Buddhism is the state of a foe destroyer. In other words, an enemy destroyer. And if there were no enemy at all, it wouldn't make sense for there to be a word like that, like drachompa, foe destroyer.
다 든디지 이제 다 좀바사 다트 가와야르스나 쇼로는 뭔데 저 소소소소 노로르.
So then where is that enemy? It is not outside of us, right? The real enemy is something that is within ourselves.
다 때쯤이 아버따는 지센디 와스 단단 안조 학고디아시 타지 푼로티가 저 토마 메바네 단다 받은 가로솔 다 보게 내가 시바레 장년에 코레 고조지레스.
So one of the main ones, of course, is anger, right? From countless rebirths in samsara up until now, continuously, it has caused us all kinds of problems and suffering. So one of the true enemies is anger.
당년에 년다고 단예가 좋은다고 쇼바도 이제 자와집이 전주 세도 고로스레 되 대간조 단다 받아 그게 라마토바 템보 라마토바지레스.
And we are deeply familiar with that mind, whereas our true friends, the ones that we can most rely on, love, compassion, and rooted in those two, bodhicitta, right? We have not kind of cultivated them, right? We don't see them as friends.
그래서 다 대프게 단저거 두와스 다 던지고 다 잡아 매봐줘야도 녜네 드시라야 되라. tumba도 땡준이 되려가 저거대래 두와스.
So then in order to really sort of get rid of those enemies and to really cultivate, draw nearer to those friends, the things that we need to cultivate among the various things, dependent arising and emptiness, are very important.
그래서 빼나가로서 당이 빼자야 돼서 그때 워크체더와 빼나 lum바질랑가로서 아니 달래서나 시 달래서나 아니 시 다티가 다 가르세가리 또 요가 강하게 매봐선도 그러와스 사고 이너레 기고대사 이너레 다 공바 이너레 로타 이너레 메코 이너레 강하게 매봐선도 그러와스
So if we think of an external enemy, right? Let's kind of think about it on the using the example of an external enemy. If we think about an external enemy, we may kind of conceptualize it as a person who we are having. So Dave, I see this thing popping up which says confirm your speaking language. Could this be the source of those really big subtitles that a couple of people were having problems with? You don't know? Okay, I'm just going to click cancel on it and maybe that will address that problem. Geshe is like any excuse for Kedrup to get out of his seat. I actually prefer staying in my seat, truth be told. kind of sedentary. So anyway, so back to the example that Geshe was giving. He said it's like he needs a holiday from the class. We're only 10 minutes in. Come on, that's not true. So anyways, say that this external enemy comes, right? And why are we identifying him or her as that external enemy? Because they are waging a war or a conflict, and then all of those things that we enjoyed because of that conflicts, right? The restaurants, the homes, all of the nice things, these start to go away. And because of that, we label that person as an enemy, right?
So
Geshe said, keep an open mind with this example because it is a way to illustrate these teachings on dependent arising and emptiness. It's actually quite important. Yeah. As long as that enemy kind of remains around us, we're not going to be able to experience ease and happiness. So what do we want to do? We want to get the enemy far away, right? To get rid of the enemy. And so the one that is really actually going to be able to get rid of that enemy, the main one that we need to cultivate is really that emptiness.
하고서 어다 세위시 대강가 매바서 기타 컨트롤 조시 be 모보지야 이제 님 모보지야 대자파 실로피아 다 니파 매바서 기타 조도 많이 gel까 조 되지래.
So in terms of the enemies that are destroying our peaceful minds, then it is the enemies like anger and so forth, the other afflicted minds. And so what we need to do is we need to cultivate emptiness so that we can get rid of those completely. I don't see a streaming thing for us. Are we streaming, Dave? Let's go. We are. Okay, go. Go. Sorry.
아니 다다테 파피사 소는 가 막히게 다 로타 이네레 메코이나 강가 툴로도 사 대야야 지도가 야보서 가르마스.
And once we get rid of the enemy, right? That's just the first task. Then we need to rebuild the country. We need to rebuild the hospitals and the schools and all of the other important things.
다 야보서 켄다고 찬다고 텐주일레 가테 조테레 마스 노라.
And so what is it that allows us to establish those necessary things after getting rid of the enemy? It is like this view of dependent arising. So of course, both of them, we understand that these work together, but this example is just a way to view how those kind of function. So love, compassion, empathy, bodhicitta, in terms of what allows us to first bring them forth, arise them, and then what allows us to strengthen, and flourish them. This is very much connected to dependent arising. So if we really want real peace and happiness, these are two things that we need to cultivate, because if we don't, that real happiness, that peace that we're seeking will be elusive. So what we need to do is to bring forth this emptiness and dependent arising. First, we need to bring it forth through reasoning, and then we need to meditate on it. And in order to be able to meditate upon it effectively, we need that single pointed concentration, don't we?
So
not understanding the reasonings behind like emptiness, for example, or dependent arising, and just trying to develop single pointed concentration without being clear upon the reasons for those minds, that's a road, but it is not the ideal way to meditate, the ideal way to cultivate. What you want to do is to look at the reasons and to really investigate, like this thing that we call emptiness, this thing that we call dependent arising. Is that something that's valid or not? Does it have a thorough grounding in reasoning or not? So becoming a foe destroyer depends upon cultivating and realizing these two things, as well as becoming a bodhisattva, as well as reaching anuttara samyak sambodhi, the perfect and complete enlightenment of a Buddha. All of them depend on these two. So perhaps too much of a long-winded introduction, Geshe said, but anyways, now let us take a moment to relax, to make the body and mind peaceful. Think that the mind is vast and beautifully clear like a blue sky, but our discursive or distracting thoughts are like the clouds obscuring that sky. So we want to slowly clear away the clouds.
Jimmy been okay. Pani Ronja Zuma, you Momboni, you what you are was the Nuji, Tassesh or so.
So think just as that cloudless sky is a beautiful shade of blue, clear, and vast, in the same way, one's mind is open and relaxed, peaceful.
No king or Tumbati, no Lolata, no day in the Recari in Ipa, Shadow Tinarishula, Wakiwo, Chinekorope, de Hajiara, de Noji, Se Koro, and Yedu Katun, the Gutsusa Meva in a Unita, Kiwokanga, Shadow Avenue.
So just as this vast sky can accumulate all sorts of beautiful birds, butterflies, and other sentient beings, our mind, although it is vast, although it has no particular shape or color that we can point to, the space of our mind allows us to bring forth very beautiful things, very beautiful positive mental qualities.
So at the say your body. Since you Zula maybe Shamba, you Jew should let up again. Proto what is we tell it. So I teach it and so I teach it that
Think on the basis of these positive qualities of the mind, I will try to bring forth the supreme positive mental quality, love and compassion for all sentient beings. I will make single-pointed, devoted requests to the holy beings in order to be able to do this. Dāmbā chōm dēndē dējīn shēpā chā chōm bā yāndā bā dzō pē sāngyē rī bā dāng shāb sū dēmbā Devar Sheba Jiten Gemba Kebudu Kalo Gyorwa Lana Meba Ladami Temba Sangye Chondende Pegyawa Shakya Tupala Chazelo Chede Kyazuji Tenba Chandende Dijin Sheba Da Chomba Yandaba Zobe Sanje Reba Dan Shasu Denba Dewa Sheba Shiden Chemba Chebu Dewe Kalo Gyowa Lana Meba Lada Minangi Denba Sanje Chandende Pejawa Shakya Dubala Chanselo Chede Kyazuji Tenba Chondende Dijin Sheba Da Chomba Yandaba Zobe Sangye Reba Dan Shasu Denba Dewa Sheba Shiten Chemba Chebu Dewe Kala Jowa
Chedan sogi chenam la jangchu badu dani gyazu chi dagi chenyen gi pe sunam gi jola penche sangye joba shu. Chedan sogi chenam la jangchu badu dani gyazu chi dagi chenyen gi pe sunam gi jola penche sangye joba shu. Chedan sogi chenam la changshu bardu dani gyasu chi dagi chenyen chi pe sanam gi jola benje sangye joba shu.
Vaya, da tume shawa, da kano se, ja chenpo da nipa chenpo chi se da ga iza tela, ane cho mebe se kanga pa cha, nyoba noji, cha tsuma zoma noji chi ski go yares.
So then by bringing forth this positive motivation within the mind that is both powerful and vast, then we can clear away any of the unwholesome or distracting minds that are in us, just like putting through a jet stream of fresh, clear water.
다 tela teren pake se, pake luma teke se, sana mandi shawa, lele chaya ke che da, kachunga ma le la shu te, u pa to tsi le ne la. Ani pa to yi kala cho mebe se kanga lo tawa na pika nomba dawa, tandi chini pa to, no kala pa yi song song pa che.
So, of course, in order to kind of bring forth that positive motivation, we want to first settle the mind in a calm and neutral state. And one of the easiest ways to do that is to practice mindfulness of the inhalation and exhalation of the breath. And we can combine this with a visualization, for example, as we exhale, imagining that all of the unwholesome, distracting minds leave from the body in the form of a dark-colored smoke.
다 시템비 갈라 아니 저저 손제도 손제 세바시고 돈바수가 다 실로 되게 까비가 넘바 실레요 소노도 그야레스.
And as we breathe in, then we can imagine that we receive all kind of positive blessings and qualities from the holy beings, the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas, in the form of beautiful white light, and that this enters us.
다 대세를 바텀바도 다른 데는 버게 오자 셀레레도 쇼와다 들이 보초서 소마.
As those lights dissolve into our mind, we can imagine that the mind becomes at ease, it becomes peaceful and relaxed.
다 들이 도마도나요 다 류츠마도 다 버게 들이요 야보 강가치레요 소노도나 우제세요 하러스.
So to meditate like this, to purify the breath like this is a kind of a very powerful way to kind of prepare the mind.
다 간조든데 리라버스 테마 서저레 되네 다 소설 가르 가제 펜바요 다 가제 다 가르 소서 다 주러스.
And of course, as we present these various methods for stilling the mind, as a practitioner, what you want to do is see which of those works for you the best, which of those is the most effective.
다용도 또 찌르로 그쪽에 토네라. 얼루로 그쪽을 다 가시 요한테 된다.
So one of those methods is known as the 9-point breathing, and that 9-point breathing can be presented in various ways. Sila. And so what we do is we do 3 cycles of 3 breaths, and you take this finger. Is this the ring finger? I don't wear rings, so I don't know. What's the finger beside the pinky? I'm not giving you guys the middle finger. It's this finger. Is it ring? Okay, all right. So I just don't want anyone to think I'm being rude. So you take this ring finger, and you're going to use that to block the tambo. Yeah. First, you block the left nostril and breathe in deeply through the right. And then switch. Block the right nostril. Ale duschene dene dusche. Okay. Okay, so Geshe is suggesting an easier method, which is to use the ring finger of the left to block the left as we breathe in the right. And then as we cover the right nostril, you can use your right hand's ring finger to then exhale to breathe out the left. So he suggests using 2 hands. So you reverse that order, right? So you sorry. And then at the end, what you're going to do, I was like, if we don't guide people through it, it might be just confusing on words alone. Geshe's like, don't worry, we're going to. Just relax, Kedrup. And then at the end, we put our 2 hands in the posture of equipoise, and we'll breathe in and out deeply 3 times through both nostrils. So now we shall begin. Niga peshtangbe, lapa niga. Ale, so okay, so niga la peshtang. Go tonsun tandagi. Sorry, younger go to. Not bet go tonsun. So lapa niga go gire dus. Ale. Niba somote. Lapa de. Tombosa de lapa de. Ale, okay. All right. So the first 3, not that go to so the Geshe mixed it up and I got all confused. So no, so supplement the so the first inhalations and exhalations, we're going to use the left hand for both, and you're going to alternate nostrils. So we're going to use the left hand. So the first 3, we're going to use the left hand. The second set of 3, we'll use the right hand for both nostrils. So in through the right. So take out the other hand, the right hand, in through the right, out through the left. Both hands in equipoise, gently in and out through both.
Think the body and mind are at ease, relaxed, peaceful, different than before. And think now activating the positive facets of this peaceful mind. I will bring forth a love and compassion, all embracing for all sentient beings. So think that in terms of helping them achieve happiness, in terms of clearing away their suffering, for every last sentient being, this is my responsibility, because ultimately, every single one is close to me. So think that self or that I want to, just like the Buddha did, just like Tara did, actualize complete and perfect enlightenment of Buddhahood. This mind which sees all beings as close and precious. The being who became the Buddha first brought forth that mind while in the hell realm. If he can do this while in the hell realm, then definitely we can do this with the facility of our human rebirth. So Geshe said that's a brief motivation. Well, maybe not so brief. We spent a lot of time cultivating that. Geshe was just about to blame me for taking a long time. No, I just know that hand thing can get really confusing sometimes. So just to go over that again, for the first set of inhalations and exhalations, the left hand, the second set, the right hand, and then both hands in equipoise. So the holy beings often recommend this method, and so we can have confidence that it's something directly related to kind of the way the winds, the energy or prana moves through the body. Ale, like the Nangchida. So Geshe said also, you'll know that when you do the inner offering, right, and you scatter the inner offering, it's done with that same ring finger, right? So there's a reason for using that finger as well.
nga se da sunji chapala ko lela wa yama wa jamombo che mombo la tin dokares.
So according to our motivation, the I or the self, we want it to reach the state of complete Buddhahood, but that's not something that is easy. And in order to really get there, we're going to need to cultivate the appropriate causes.
Jamombo gugundu che mo gugundu ja anem mano gugundu je yashu gugundu was.
So we need causes and conditions that are complete, that are unmistaken, and that are the very best, most powerful causes and conditions. So how to begin that, and what are the stages of cultivating all of that, right? That's important. And so, for example, with developing bodhicitta, we know that the steps, one of the important steps is starting with equanimity. So we'll see that equanimity is cultivated in the equalizing and exchanging instruction for bodhicitta, as well as the 7-point training for bodhicitta. Equanimity is important. And so when we speak about equanimity, this is a word that has kind of different meanings depending on the context. So the particular kind of equanimity that we cultivate during the 7-point cause and effect instruction for rising bodhicitta, this is a little bit different from what is explained when we cultivate equalizing and exchanging self and others. And this is a little bit different when we talk about equanimity as a feeling, right? So a little bit different kind of angles on it. And yes, you said you forgot one important one, also the 4 boundless thoughts, right? The 4 immeasurables, the equanimity there also has a slightly different interpretation. So in the 7-point cause and effect instruction and equalizing and exchanging self and others, equanimity is cultivated for the particular purpose of purifying our own mind. So, of course, when we first cultivate equanimity in the context of these instructions, it can seem maybe a little bit incongruous at first, but we have to understand the context of the equanimity here. It is particularly an opposition antidote to attachment and aversion, because if we have attachment and aversion in our mind as we do these practices, they can be a significant obstacle. So the love and kind of the mercy that we have at present for those who are close to us, that is like a positive thing from the perspective of like, it's not like we're trying to get rid of that love that we feel for those close people. And on the temporary level, that kind of love and so forth for the people close to us has many benefits. But from the perspective of the ultimate level, of that ultimate peace and happiness that we are trying to achieve, we can't do that if we keep the love limited just to those who are close to us. Yeah. Oh, right. So Geshe said, think about when you need to kind of like get your car, when you, motor. Okay, so think about that you want to kind of jump to be able to move vastly forward. Before you can jump and move vastly forward, you need to back up a little bit
so that you can run and then make the jump to where you need to go. So it's a little bit like that.
다 돈요 때 단단 가서 돈요 어수잖아 거기서 된다 버지래. 요조스다. 너만 둬야 되고 따따 제와 되고 따따 로토 매이자. 시대자 파진도나. 아니 오다다 고제시 지라기가.
So the equanimity that we're cultivating is a little bit like that, like the love and the kind of empathy that we have for those people close to us. That's a good starting point, but it's not going to be powerful enough to get us where we need to go. So we need to use equanimity to kind of back up a little bit so that as we move forward into that love and compassion, we can take it to that ultimate level. So as we first cultivate equanimity, there can be a misunderstanding that arises, thinking, okay, actually, like, the effect of this is that I'm feeling kind of less love and empathy for those people that are close to me. But actually, this is not the case. What the cultivation of equanimity is allowing you to do is to sort of reset the mind a little bit so that that love and compassion can be more powerful, all-encompassing. So, of course, now we can say that for those people who are close to us, who we feel close to, we have love, compassion, and empathy for them. But because of that field, it's like there's conditions on it, right? So that love and compassion is necessarily limited. It's a limited love and compassion.
And
if we observe the behaviors of different kinds of beings, right, even those in the animal realm are able to have love and compassion for those immediate families or for the people that they are close to. Yeah. So we're not saying we don't need that, and we're not abandoning that. But what the preliminary cultivation and equanimity allows us to do is to take that to a love and compassion that is not so limited, that goes beyond that. So think about it. By sort of doing this little bit, pulling back, resetting with equanimity, then we take that love and compassion, which is limited, and we make that love and compassion limitless. And of course, within that limitless love and compassion, your family, the people who are close to you, they're included within that because it's limitless. So it's not like you're abandoning that. And also, we also talk, people are concerned about their own welfare, their own wellness. When we say all sentient beings, when we say all human beings, even when we say all sentient beings, right, we are a part of those family of humans and beings. So as we develop love and compassion for all of them, we're also included in that, right? We're not abandoning the love and compassion for ourselves. Right. Huh? Yeah. And in terms of this self-love and this self-compassion, it is said that the bodhisattvas, those realized beings, the compassion and love that they have for ourselves is so strong, we don't even have 1% of the self-love and self-compassion for ourselves that the Buddhas and the bodhisattvas have for us. So we say that, like, I love myself, I care about myself, but actually that's not totally accurate. It's also limited. Yeah. Yeah. So these are many things to consider in this context. So
what's the difference between this type of equanimity and the equanimity cultivated in the context of the four immeasurables or the four boundless thoughts? The equanimity cultivated in the context of these four immeasurables is not for purifying our mind. It's an equanimity aimed at the mind of purifying others.
This one, or that you are Shikares, what you say, yea, in your passing, no Lord, that and the buttons of you can't dig in. I am nearly children like any to do.
So this is something really profound, and it's very much related to the world's situation. If we look at so many of the conflicts and enmity in the world, it's due to a lack of equanimity. It's due to these attitudes of, with attachment, holding those close to us in a biased way, and with aversion, seeing others as far away.
This one, or that
So the equanimity cultivated from the perspective of the four immeasurables is actually an antidote to that. Bonda, younger Sonam? It's an equanimity wishing for other sentient beings, the attitudes they have of holding some close and others far away, for that to be purified. And this practice is actually said to be one of the most powerful forms of giving, which is the giving of love. And also the generosity or the perfection of giving of protection from fear. So if we do these well, actually, these are very great, profound practices.
All the
problems between human beings, between animals, between groups of people, all of them can be traced to these minds of attachment and aversion. So maybe a little bit too much detail here, but hopefully something that is important and useful for all of you. So, of course, within this text of the Bhāvanākrama, the stages of meditation, there are like profound instructions on equanimity. Some of these instructions, though, they are maybe a little bit more challenging. And so there are also instructions, there are also instructions that maybe for beginners are a little bit more accessible.
Dewa chunjuni zute deshi tembochin dewa yorawas. De noji pama da senje yuzu chachibai somato.
So the holy beings propose this method of first that kind of feeling of closeness, that sort of love that we have for those who are close to us. We think that just as they wish for happiness and do not wish to experience suffering, so do those sentient beings who are strangers to us, who we maybe have not met. They also wish to be free from suffering and to be able to achieve every happiness. And then extending that and saying, may also those beings who I find difficult, who I see as enemies, be free from suffering and experience happiness. And kind of that is the way that we expand it. So that's super accessible, right? Like that's something that we can kind of like cultivate in our mind right away without too much difficulty, and right away develop some experience of that. So that kind of equanimity is similar to the type of equanimity that is cultivated in terms of the equalizing and exchanging self and others' instruction for arising bodhicitta. So now we come to the text. So 닝제 전이 센센두겐 좋아.
다 가족 가족 안에 돈요 고거래 안에 때네 좀비가 때네
So last time we talked a little bit about the essentialness of equanimity and also a little bit about the importance of bringing forth love and compassion. And we also looked a little bit at there's a discussion about compassion itself, like what is the nature of compassion and what is it actually like? Cheers. Oh, yeah. And these divisions aren't given in the text, but actually they make sense here. We are developing that for sentient beings in a general way, like thinking of all sentient beings, and then in specific ways, thinking about specific types of sentient beings and their difficulties. And in terms of great compassion, what is its object? This is not something so easy to discern, and there are actually a lot of points of debate about this. Geshe remembers, like at the monastery, they debated this point quite a lot. The compassionate mind has the nature of wishing all sentient beings to be free from suffering. So this, you can note here, this is the definition of the nature of compassion. So meditate on compassion for all sentient beings, because the three realms of existence are intensely tortured by the three types of suffering in various forms. And so we see that out of those types of suffering, we could say that that compounded or all pervasive suffering is the most important. So the order is a bit different in the English and the Tibetan, but that's okay. We'll read over it again. Younger Sunda di Ningje Gingo Dang. Yeah, dene. So next, the next part, meditate on compassion for all sentient beings, because the beings in the three realms of existence are tortured by three types of suffering. So this part, compassion for all beings, this is the general compassion. Remember, we talked about general and specific. This is the general compassion. So all sentient beings, in a very general way, when we say of the three realms, we know this is the desire, form, and formless realms. And so out of these three realms, the desire realm is kind of the vastest. And within that desire realm, we can speak about 6 types of migrating beings. And so within the desire realm, you have these 6 types of migrators, of sentient beings, and they are experiencing these 3 types of suffering. So there's a difference here, though, in the form and the formless realms. Unlike the desire realm, they don't experience the suffering of suffering. So they just experience the suffering of change and the all-pervasive or compounded suffering. Yeah. So that all-pervasive suffering, what does pervasive mean? It means that this particular kind of suffering pervades all beings, pervades all 3 realms. That's one way of understanding pervasive suffering. And if we do not take a direct step to counter, to uproot that all pervasive suffering, we will not see an end to it. So all sentient beings within the three realms all of the three types of sufferings that they need to experience. They need to be free of all of these. This is the nature of compassion and cultivated in the general or encompassing way. If we do the other angle of this and think of all three realms sentient beings without exception, may they possess happiness and the causes of happiness, then this is the cultivation of love.
So this
is the cultivation of compassion in the general way for all sentient beings, as it appears in the text, and Geshe also applied this to meditating on love. So now we have cultivating compassion specifically to specific groups of sentient beings. And so this is through going through the 6 types of migrators, and then we begin with the hell beings. So Geshe said that, there can be a question like of is hell really a thing or not? Is that a place or not? Geshe said he doesn't think that this is such a big question in our current world. If we look at the terrible suffering beings are experiencing in fires, experiencing in floods, and so forth, that type of suffering from the heat and cold, from the elements, it's just like the hell beings, what they experience. Sangye dorji den tene? Nyeyen sena? Ale, sorry. Ale, it's such a giming, right? So Geshe is talking about dorji den dang tanya borebe. So Geshe nye. So so if anybody knows the Sanskrit equivalent, I think it is Vaishali. Anyways, this story is about the Buddha when he was abiding in a place not too far from Bodh Gaya, and I think that place is Vaishali. So as the Buddha was preaching the holy Dharma to an assembly, many beings in the form of hungry ghosts started to arrive. So Geshe said that it's a little bit of a heavy story. So buckle up, folks. And Geshe said, being able to kind of see and understand this, like really profoundly, this requires the blessing of the Buddha. It's not something so easy. So as the pretas, the hungry ghosts, began to approach the assembly to whom the Buddha was preaching, some of the people could actually see those hungry ghosts, and they got afraid, and so they started to leave that place. Eventually, to the point where all of the people who had been listening to the Dharma teaching had left. And the Buddha said, you don't need to get up and leave. You don't need to be afraid. Those beings that terrify you so much are actually your near and dear ones. So why are they in this state? Well, this illustrates how all of us need to accumulate virtuous or wholesome karma. And in the absence of that, one is born in a state where one lacks food, drink, and so forth. And this is why you see those former near and dear ones in this form. And so great lamas have these kind of direct experiences with these realms, The previous Trijang Rinpoche, Trijang Dorje-chang, said that there was an experience where one of his students had taken rebirth as a hungry ghost. That hungry ghost possessed a person who had come to talk to Trijang Rinpoche, and it asked him to make some special kind of offerings because it said it had not eaten or drunk anything in over a month. So everybody saw this kind of possession that took place, and that request made. So not everybody, other people that were present, saw that. So as this happened, Trijang Rinpoche said, just listen to what I'm talking about, and we can talk later. And he said, I can't listen right now because I am desperate. I haven't had anything to eat or drink in over a month. So Karin-san, konso dream mato So Trijang Rinpoche had some roasted barley flour, had some tsampa in front of him, and so kind of like put that forth. But because the being was in the form of a hungry ghost, it wasn't able to take any sustenance from that. It is said that a lot of the hungry ghosts, they abide on smells. So Trijang Rinpoche there was some kind of fire, like maybe a butter lamp or something, and he put the tsampa into that fire and recited some prayers. And it is said that the body of the person who the hungry ghost was possessing kind of put its face right into that flame and started to take the sustenance, right? That was how it happened. So many people were around at that time who witnessed, the person who was possessed by the hungry ghost behaving in that way. Yeah, so we can't necessarily see these beings, but this is the power of these practices, like offering the tsur. So when Trijang Rinpoche was reciting the ritual of the tsur for the hungry ghost, then that person kind of put their face right into that flame to be able to take the sustenance. So Geshe said that he has actually a lot of stories about these different types of beings, and he can share some more of them. So what we're going to do now is we're going to read through how to cultivate the different types of compassion for these different types of beings in the desire realm. So the Buddha has said that the heat and other types of pain constantly torture beings in the hells for a very long time. So it is said that, once we have fallen into the hells, we're in great difficulty. That's why we need to make some preparation before, so that doesn't happen to us. Because once one falls into the hells, it is said that one experiences a profound amount of suffering for a long period of time. Yeah. Standard So Mahāyāna, one of the hero disciples of the Buddha, he was able to kind of visit the hells, and he would see the causal relationship. So he was observing one being who was experiencing suffering in the hell, and he saw that this was because he had made
animal sacrifices and other offerings, trying to make those into religious rituals. And we see that even in the world today, right, there are some people who are trying to make animal sacrifices as a religious ritual.
다 걸어서 지지는 것이 봐이 나가는 것이 것이 봐이잖아.
Mahāyāna.
키스는 다 그처럼 양도는 니 로마를 읽고 지들 같은 맞지 마도 가서 쟤는 악강에 누워
And so Geshe is saying that he thinks that the story goes that Mahāyāna actually knew this person in their life as a human being, where they made all of those kind of offerings of sentient beings. And then when he went to the hell realm and saw him there, he actually said to him, please tell all of my students who I instructed in those practices of sacrifice to stop, because each time they make those sacrifices based on my instruction, the suffering that I experience here intensifies.
다른 뭔가 봐야래니 코치 연달 갖게 깨자 마시는 데 처치 못 쓰느라 코러스 로트 수지라로
Ale, ¿Cadés?
코러 등 뭐나티 맞두자티가
Yeah.
강에 누군데서 콜레가 살아와
Yeah.
코 연달 깨깨자 가게 마시도 못해 레트 텐로 도와고 봐
Mahāyāna. Ale consultor chiquementis.
매매 코절 라라로 그래서 라지 메르마 콘 강에 제모 책에서 와 뭔가 봐
Sungdangtes can
아니
say
아케자 뭔가 봐 콘절 레트 간 로거 와스
Getrudenso. Yeah, then it.
그때서 레트 비깔라 이네 저 자자 체크라 와스 레지고 차고라
Ale, los.
뭐 정보 뭐 여보이자 키게 연다 코로 주고지까 키게 자 마시는 뭐 레트 파트 로고
So Mahāyāna, he kind of was concerned about this, and then he sort of after he left the hell realm, he went directly to the students of that Lama that was reborn there, and he said to them in a very direct way, right? Because Mahāyāna was known as being really direct, not mincing his words, like kind of you need to stop this. So normally one would think that you want to be like a little bit skillful about it and maybe kind of work towards that point, but he just said right away, you need to stop this. and because he was kind of told them to stop this cherished, what they thought was religious practice in a very kind of like forthright way, actually their reaction was they got angry at him and they all beat Mahāyāna terribly. And they beat him so terribly, actually, that Mahāyāna came close to death. And eventually he was able to escape, and he explained this to another important disciple of the Buddha, Shariputra. And Shariputra scolded him. They said that out of all of the hero disciples of the Buddha, it is said that Mahāyāna has the supreme miracle powers. So why did you not use your miracle powers to save yourself from that situation? Did you forget your miracle powers, or like what happened? Why did you get beaten in this way? Tama drive into Koso koma sonse. Jungi tama? Jung tama karere.
Seno call dunga dunga dungina yamaras, ina kange chimbotes was. The Shariputra tomon roji yamata kebazala was kalekale.
Yeah. And so of course, you know, in a way he was beyond suffering, but still in human form, so experienced that difficulty. And so Shariputra kind of scolded him and also said, you know, as somebody with wisdom, you should express things in a skillful way. So there are kind of many stories in the histories of Buddhism where people have kind of are able to see and interact with all these types of sentient beings. So we're going to continue down.
Pache shanda mazepi timba to kombe dungache se kombe lishanda dunga mambo nyongo shikatsato.
He also said that hungry ghosts are scorched by hunger and thirst and experience immense physical suffering.
Ani ta saya de tuya ma
So they suffer from a lack of food and drink, and then because of this, their bodies become very emaciated, right? And they're in a state of physical suffering.
So now
we come to animals.
초와도 다 컨트롤와 세바도 너바 채와라 수비도가 너바 뭐뭐뇨 코나노 당게 땡가 좀 이렇게 되는 디와스.
So these are things that we can see ourselves with our own eyes that goes on. We can also see animals suffering in many miserable ways. They eat each other, become angry, are hurt, and killed.
다시 이제 전문으로 뭐 돈노노 지라지 사인지도 잡아쇼 사태 샤베치바 동바 관계가 다면로 조지래.
So one of the main kind of prayers that all of the holy beings make is sourced from the Bodhisattva Charyavatara, where we think, may all beings who suffer from hunger, thirst, the fear of being eaten, and so forth, may they be free from that suffering.
다 저왕이네 녀랭이네 브랜도 그거요나. 대지 때문에 너 집이 따왔는 지 많이 봐. 소소롱은 깊이 내는 간디요 살때 저도 브랜드 그거야.
If we really want to be able to bring forth the compassion and so forth in a really strong and effective way, we don't want to feel a separation between the sufferings of those beings, like we're watching something happening on TV. We should relate that to, like, what if that happened to someone close to me? What if that happened to myself?
다 마살레스마. 뭐노 좀 내가 용스 소이 보니 지라지 거와다 다 컨트롤사와. 내가 셔봐. 두바도 타와세를 소소니야도 타와. 무두바도 쳐바세를 다 다도 쳐봐.
Yeah.
보송아.
So we can see that human beings too experience various acute kinds of pain, not able to find what they want. They are resentful and harm each other. They suffer the great pain of losing the desirable things and confronting the undesirable things, as well as the pain of poverty. There are those whose minds are bound by various fetters of disturbing emotions like craving.
아니 개가나 두바제 대신도 두가 코나 이노.
And so Geshe said the next part of this paragraph actually explains the causes of all of those sufferings that human beings experience. So as we continue, they suffer the great pain of losing desirable things like friends and so forth, confronting undesirable things like enemies, as well as the pain of poverty. There are those whose minds are bound by various fetters of disturbing emotions like craving. Others are in turmoil with different types of wrong views. These are all the causes of misery. Therefore, they're always an excruciating pain, like being on a precipice.
레도 녀모 대자도 컨트롤 버게 따따 거를 베테제 네바테 토바징아조 거가 버게 롱다고 다 니바지 마라나 가디이나 개바 개바세리 롱가
Oh yeah, masa. So as long as we don't defeat karma and affliction, as long as we are able to give rise to attachment and aversion, it's like we are at the end of a dangerous road, sort of hanging over a precipice, right? We could always fall into intense suffering. So what this is saying is that if you really have compassion for yourself, then you'll want to get rid of karma and affliction, and it is through defeating those and overcoming attachment and aversion that you actualize the compassion and care for yourself, because it is through that that you can ultimately be free of suffering. Yeah. So Geshe said that he knows that this is like a heavier part of the text, but we have to keep in mind the purpose of this text, which is to be able to bring forth compassion for others. So the way that the text works here, stages of meditation, is actually thinking about other beings as a way of bringing love, compassion, and so forth as the first step. When we contemplate the different types of suffering in the Lamrim Chemo, the great treatise on the stages of the path, and the Lamrim Tingbo, the middle length treatise on the stages of the path, these are actually done from the perspective of
oneself. And then through thinking about one's own potential future suffering, one goes for refuge, observes the law of karma, and so forth. Here, it's all from the perspective of others.
This one, 어떤 데 돈이 걸어시고 침복은 것도 주준대 시작이야. 현재 요즘 뭐 요즘 주주 배제도 알아봤어.
Again?
거를 봐봐.
Yeah, So one thing we can understand is that the stages of meditation is a thoroughly Mahāyāna practice text. So therefore, it's in the form of a great scope, if we think about the Lamrim. And for that reason, all of these discussions happen on the basis of thinking about these difficulties experienced by other sentient beings.
Yeah.
And so, of course, we are there too, though. It's not like we're neglecting our own suffering, because we are in human form right now. And so the sufferings that are described about humans, we experience those as well. Yeah. So yeah, we have to check that. Candice Tagore, di treci jagore mado konsuhando. But the protector Nagarjuna says that actually there is a way to really kind of think about, to question whether we are actually human or not. Because Nagarjuna says that one who is only obsessed with self-concern and has no modicum of concern for others is not truly fitting the definition of a human being. So yes, gods suffer the misery of change. So, for example, signs of impending death and their fall to unfortunate states constantly oppress the minds of gods of the desired realm. How can they live in happiness?
This one,
And so this is all the different types of gods, or what we often call devas. I often use the word devas because it's not gods as we think about it in the West, right? Yeah. Sukamdang sukni kamdang dinsorwa. Yeah. So here we can understand that when we say gods or devas, these are the devas of the desire realm, the form, and the formless realms.
This one,
And so now as we come, so we're on page 14, third line. As we come now, there is a description and a discussion of, which is like a definition of all pervasive or compounded suffering. So where they translate misery here, that's what most translations would give as suffering, just so you know. Pervasive misery is what arises under the power of causes characterized by actions and disturbing emotions. It has the nature and characteristic of momentary disintegration and pervades all wandering beings.
This one, or that digger, and it's about the course of the color, but that's what
So this is a really kind of inclusive meditation, because that pervasive suffering is a type of suffering that is experienced by all beings, also those ones in the form and formless realms.
Oh, that is
So the next part, now we actually go on how to relate this all to our meditation on compassion. Therefore, see all wandering beings as immersed in a great fire of suffering. Think that they are like you and not desiring suffering at all. Alas, all my beloved sentient beings are in such pain. What can I do to make them free and make their sufferings your own?
So
for ourselves, for those close to us, we don't want them to have to experience any suffering, whether of heat,
cold, and so forth. So we're just trying to extend that wish of not wanting them to suffer to all sentient beings.
다 디게 셀 강에 매바데 그 지체 가제 통하이나. 근데 누가도 다지 요바. 누가 매바서지 요바. 더다 누가 요절 다지 요바데 시선 다 가와도 또와도 뽑아지는 거야.
So if this gets you down, Geshe said, people can be sensitive about this. So if this discussion gets you down, just remember the other part of the teachings, that once suffering is known, that we can address the causes of suffering, we can achieve liberation from suffering, and we can also lead others to a state of liberation from suffering, right? Keep that context in mind.
And
then, sorry, and one thing he mentioned, I forgot. Then we become brave, we can become courageous and joyful. If we see the nature of reality, understand how things are, we can see that there is an end to suffering for ourselves and others. And this can bring forth a very courageous and joyful attitude.
And
when we can bring forth compassion that is conjoined with that kind of superior intention, I myself alone will free these sentient beings, then this kind of gives you kind of a great sort of thrust of bravery, courage within you. It's something very powerful. So that is, so yeah, it's like, this is always the difficult. No. So Geshe said that we are through these explanations of the suffering of the text. And I was just joking with Geshe, this is the part of the text which is like, where people maybe are like, do I really want to? And Geshe said, this is so important, but you have to keep in context the mind that the whole purpose of everything we do is for that freedom from suffering. That freedom of suffering is possible for ourselves and others. So now, so Geshe said that, like, if we're too afraid of these essential aspects that we need to cultivate to make those really powerful meditations, then you'll be like me, whose head is like a bum roti. So I don't know how to explain that. A bum roti is like in India when you buy a loaf of bread that's in the Western style, like that big chunky thing, and it's kind of just sitting there and not doing anything, right? So that's why we need to contemplate these things. Yeah. So Geshe said that in the monastery, you give people names of why am I explaining this to you guys? You give people names of like various inanimate objects. And so because of like, I guess the size of my head and so forth, it's like a bum roti. That's not very nice. So Geshe said, but the part you think that loaf of bread looks really solid and kind of nice, but as you get closer, you see it's not doing very much. So Geshe said, important to laugh as we go to these topics, because, if there's no laughter. So now we are going to come to the text of Je Gampopa Daupolaje.
Okay, 처음에 셴메 제시에 나도 몰라 마셔와시기.
Oh, sorry. Not so cow do the triple lemon to carry.
Did the body.
The body. Okay. Okay, so we are still in the 10 necessary things. We are on number 7.
처음에 셴메 제시에 나도 몰라 마셔와시기. 소소 과들 괜찮아.
나서 거의 큐네하고 왔었어.
이 단다 제가 송아스 듬바. That's the ba. Fame.
Sorry, guys, I just got mixed up with my pages. I'm looking for page number 2. Yes, okay, sorry, I found it. My pages got mixed up. So we are sorry. So we are on number 7. Gocha dirwa.
Kochamare te tuban do tsason ka.
Dechuba
Ba chome jeme je chemi na da mala ma sho ashigi.
Oh, yes. So we are on page number 2, the 10 necessary things, number 7. You need to be unattached and free from clinging, so to avoid, as to avoid letting the rope to your nose slip into the hands of others.
Oh, that's me. Oh, sa so so tenda longa manu to longa tembo ni samba chini la. Ani oh ta macho meba do ta dipile gabo tending shula ta pake ma sho achi ko ya.
So this means that really having kind of sort of set ourselves on a path of what is wholesome, a complete path of what is wholesome. We have to avoid coming under the influence, right, of those who could lead us in the wrong direction. So people who are, for example, praising negativity, engaging in negativity, and so forth.
Oh, so so ta pen zo ga. So if
we don't kind of have a resolve and know what we need to do and sort of hook into that, then we can easily be led astray, kind of like that analogy of a rope. We can easily be led astray by friends who are lacking in virtue.
And
even if we don't have friends who may kind of influence, negative friends who lead us into unwholesome things, if we don't kind of sort of keep steady and free from clinging, then it is possible that our practice can easily degenerate.
Then the
next one, easy. You need to constantly exert yourself in gathering the 2 accumulations by embracing them with the preliminary, main, and concluding stages. So the I, or the self, ultimately has to come to these 2 goals, to the goal of the truth body, the Dharmakaya, and the form body, the Rupakaya. In order to achieve this, we need to complete the 2 accumulations of merit and wisdom.
So when
we talk about that, then of course the one side of that, the accumulation of wisdom, this is related to, for example, the understanding and cultivation of emptiness and also dependent arising that we spoke about.
This one, that you know, that a little bit is
Listen. You need to turn your mind towards helping other beings with loving kindness and compassion, both directly and indirectly.
And so
Geshe said the next one, chupadirwa. So we don't need to explain this one too much, because you know so much of today was talking about the importance of developing loving kindness and compassion, how we cultivate that, and how the achievement of all temporary and ultimate happiness depends upon that. If we really see the Buddha and Tara, for example, as kind of great beings and worthy of respect, then there is no way to kind of view them with respect and not also view sentient beings with respect and concern.
If
the Buddha, even the Buddha came to meet us directly, and he would say, for you to see the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas as kind of precious and important, and then for you to not respect
the importance of other sentient beings, this is something that is incongruous. It absolutely makes no sense. And we know that the Bodhisattva vows, if we kind of decide like we're just really not going to help even one single sentient being, then those vows are terribly degenerated. You need to avoid letting phenomena stray into concrete materiality by means of knowledge and understanding.
This one,
yeah. So really our study needs to be very kind of inclusive in that any object or any phenomena that we turn attention to, we are able to understand and appreciate that it lacks even an atom of inherent existence, that it is empty of inherent existence. Yeah. Yeah. So when we say concrete materiality, that concrete materiality is that view that things are concrete because they are inherently existent, right? That's what we need to get rid of. And slowly, if we cultivate this understanding, slowly, that kind of lifts and we're able to see that things have a lack of inherent existence, and then all of the practice and study will start to flow. So, oh, right. And so when we do this, we can overcome attachment and anger, because when we stop to grasp at the fact that there is some sort of pinpointable solid existence, if there is not that grasping at that appearance of solid inherent existence, then attachment and anger don't have anything to work with. If they don't have a basis for arising, they cannot come forth. But of course, this is something that we have to approach from a gradualist perspective. It's not through kind of just thinking about this a little bit that the attachment and the aversion are just going to completely kind of go away. This is something that we need to think about and cultivate, and over a long period of time, we'll see that they diminish and diminish. So in those ways, it's nice we finished that list of 10. And so now let us, with a happy mind, dedicate the merits. I just want to quickly say, everybody is absolutely welcome for the question and answer, the discussion. Sometimes it goes on a little bit. If you need to leave after the dedication, please feel free. But if you are up for a discussion, the opportunity to ask Geshe some questions, please stay. You're very welcome. So let us dedicate the merits. Changju Senju Rinpoche Maje Banan Jeju Rechi Chewan Yamba Meba Yang Gone Gondu Bewa Resho Tongni Tawa Rinpoche Maje Banam Jeju Rechi Chewan Yamba Meba Yang Gone Gondu Bewa Sho Jambe Bai Jidar Kyamba Tang Kundu Zambo Deyan Dejinde Deda Gungi Jesu Dalo Jir Gewa Dida Tamje Rabdungo Duzun Jebe Gyawa Tamje Gi Ngowa Gangla Jodu Ngabade Dagi Gewe Tsawa Digun Kyon Zambo Jeje Radu Ngowa Gangri Rawe Kowe Shinganzo Pendan Dewa Malu Jongwe Ne Chere Ziwon Tenzin Jatso Yi Shabe Side Badu Tengyo. So through the merits that we have accumulated, may all sentient beings, just in the way we mentioned, get rid of this mind of attachment that holds some close and the minds of aversion that holds others as far away. In this way, may all sentient beings give rise to the mind of equanimity and so forth, and may there be peace.
Okay.
And through establishing this ground of equanimity, then by planting, the seeds may love and compassion bloom as a vast harvest for all beings. And through this coming forth and through this merit, may all wars and diseases, imbalances of the elements causing natural disasters and so forth, may all of these be cleared away. So we'll pause there. You are very welcome to ask some questions if you would like.
Go ahead, B.
Hi, B, go ahead.
Okay. I have been trying to understand, really understand what it means to be primordially pure. Okay. So for us, Geluk, when we say primordially pure, I understand it to be referring to the fact that the empty aspect, that our mind or all phenomena are empty. So, and specifically, it is referring to the aspect of natural purity of emptiness. That's my understanding. And
Yes.
if that is correct, I think I'm not 100% clear on how that aspect of natural purity come about. Why emptiness?
How it came about, like what its cause is?
No. How is it that emptiness has that aspect?
Natural purity.
Yes.
Got you. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. Yes. Let me ask this. Dene chiwa di dabo chikre dua mo di hakoya tabche chegi yores. Nganso di tambo ne dagpares. Roa nganso sem tambo ne dagpares. Tambo ne dagpasena kadi ne dagpa. Drima mepa. Ranjingi dapa. Roa. Dene ranjingi dapa samlo thangna di kandes res. Di nganso sem tompaningi chasheres, tompaningi ngo dapo chikres, rangjin dagpegi tompani de nganso sem samlotana kandes samlotangares. Ane tompani seria di nganso rangjin dagpa kare chene lagires.
Rangjin
dang So to answer this question, we should think about the two types of stains. And when we speak about the two types of stains, we talk about natural stains and adventitious stains. And when we Jima, right? Yeah. And when we talk about the mind, or we talk about the self, when we say primordially pure, it means that from the beginning, it is free of those natural stains. It is free of natural stains. So because they are in nature empty, they are free of naturally abiding stains. I'll say that again. Because they are by nature empty. They are free of naturally abiding stains. And that is what we mean when we speak of the natural purity of emptiness and also the primordial purity of the mind.
This one,
and in the Majjhimika Sautantrika system, they say that there are two svabhavakayas, or nature truth bodies. One svabhavakaya that is connected to the natural, the emptiness of natural stains, and one swabhavakaya which is connected to the emptiness of adventitious stains.
This one, Kota Ina Kota Tomatamasa Comiji Tabaramato, Kota Triga, in the Rioba, the Niduki Yamaras.
Can you say it? Jima?
Tomate?
Yeah.
In a Chinko Yamaras,
yeah.
Tabaramato.
Ale, Gonda, Ngo Niku, Jima di Pangne Jubsares.
Shaton,
yeah.
Tomato,
yeah.
Tomasa Mini Jasmas.
Yeah.
Roger Tomasa Michitani Yabaramato.
But it's really important when we're having these discussions, we talk about natural stains and we talk about adventitious stains. But it's important to understand that from the point of view of the kind of like ultimate nature of reality, the way things really are, these are not actual things, right? They're things that aren't really there. But we call them stains in some contexts. Why do we call them stains in some contexts? Because it's a mistaken view of ignorance which causes the perception of those. So the true stain is ignorance.
Yeah.
So that is the problem. That is what the true stain is. And it is always connected with that ignorance, perceiving things as inherently existent. So from one perspective, we know that adventitious stains or defilements are, practically something that is hindering us. But those adventitious stains or defilements are yeah. It's that adventitious stain is this mind of ignorance, that object which is arising. So the true stain is the mind's ignorance. So the ignorance grasping at the self is the true stain. And its object, the objects of that ignorance grasping at the self is a false object, right? It's a mistaken object. But ignorance, thinking that object is really there, that it is something that is true. This is what causes all of our problems. And because of that, then the name stain is applied to it.
This one?
Like, that was so easy. What's the problem? Like, easy for those of you who are sharp faculty, but a poor old Kedrup, not easy for him. So because that is not a true object, right? It's never really been there. So therefore we can say pure from the beginning. And that's what we can understand the meaning of primordial pure as. Based upon this understanding, some people say that we are already Buddha, right? That the mind is already Buddha. Some would argue that. But
in our tradition, we would say, this is when we're talking about the empty aspect of the mind. Actually, B mentioned that in her question. It's that empty aspect of the mind.
Good to this way.
Maybe,
Is that kind of in the direction you were going, B?
yes. Yeah,
Okay.
I needed to hear all of that again. So maybe the way I can think about this is that they are just like the two purity. There are two ways in which we use the word pure. The way pure in the sense of the natural purity, and then pure in the sense of now we have gotten rid of all the stains, the defilements and whatnot.
Yes, okay, gotcha.
So samsara is when we haven't gotten rid of the adventitious stain, and then the Buddha line is when we have gotten rid of the adventitious stain. And the fact that we can do that is because of the natural purity.
Dene di davo samutansoa, dene nganso dagpa ni yores. Rua rangjingi dagpa yores. Ane kandes logore chik jima nipati? Loburgi jima ne dapa chik yores. Loburgi jima dinso yope kaprula, nganso korwa dapo de gogire duas. Loburgi jima pangne, nganso tarpa togire sang ge jogires. Tarpa drub tubia dang, sangi drub tubia degede, nganso ngumane dapa yin sang loburgi jima denso pangne, dene gopang denso togires. That is correct, B. Geshe agrees with that. Yeah.
Da ruji parashi kari varsena. Ruji pe nganzo seg tumani de kale gude chan rogere.
Yeah.
Hagoson.
Yes.
O te se to yo mare. Thanjo ayena nganzo seg tumani koron gude chan rogere. Tama.
Gokden.
Mundawade.
Minjao ya bukomaso niga gokden rogire sta mochi koswanga.
Ruji ba yena seg tumani te kadi yena tuni za de gude chan chaya yo.
Ale. And so one of the kind of I guess disagreements between the Sautantrika and Prasangika Madhyamika schools is that the Sautantrikas say that emptiness of the mind cannot become true cessations. Tel gyurwa sem gitompa nidi gokden chagires. In the Prasangika school, what we would say is that when the adventitious defilements are abandoned, that mind's emptiness becomes true cessation. So Geshe also quantifies that, because I know that B likes to listen to different presentations. So Geshe was quantifying that, saying this is the Sera J understanding. So he's not totally sure that would be the same in all of the Densasum. Geshe said, I specified Sera J. Well, he said one of the seats, and Geshe was from Sera J, so I assumed that. But he said, he's not sure that that's the only one. Anyway, some of the seats hold that view. Some others may hold a different view. But that tiny little maybe nuance is not so important. The general kind of flow of how that happens, it was as described. And it's exactly as B said, which is that the reason that we can get rid of the adventitious defilements is because there is already a lack of natural stains from the beginning. And that's what we mean when we say primordially pure. And primordially pure, I know a lot of people don't have English as their first language. So primordial pure is basically saying pure from the beginning. That's what that means. So that's the basis of how things really are. And that because that basis of that fundamental purity is there, this is why we can slowly purify and abandon all those adventitious defilements. So thank you, B, for your question. That was a good one, but yeah, so I hope we clarified. I think we did get there eventually. So maybe next person.
Yes, it did.
We did? Okay, great. I'm glad to hear it. Okay, next person.
So we had one from social media and then Rebecca.
Sure, go ahead, Dave.
And then another one after Rebecca from social media again. Okay, so
Sure. Sounds good.
So
Social media, Rebecca, social media,
yep.
Rebecca. Okay, got it. Yeah.
Okay,
Go ahead, Dave.
So is the hungry ghosts realm avoidable based on spiritual attainment, or is it inevitable?
Nganso yidak seria de nganso nyamlen la tene dromagoya dapochik sogires kadi ine nyalwa as yidak drogoya ginyanga dusa.
So nganzo
Yeah, nganso.
mara nyola tene ta pen dromaga so ya chene manron tene so ya was.
So definitely on the basis of practice, we can secure the situation so that we definitely do not have to be reborn as a hungry ghost. It's definitely not inevitable.
Ta deng yem chezo yo jibu tomba so mo su do mo yo ar ngabo la de sena shomba do ni ji zawa shonju sel ale mato ba yina yo choa phage tembo cha ba yina yo.
Yeah. So one thing that Nagarjuna said, which is maybe helpful to mention here, is that the protector Nagarjuna said that not even having a realization of love and compassion, but if we just have a feeling, a stable feeling of love and compassion within our mind, this closes the door to the three unfortunate realms. So one of those would be hungry ghosts, right? So this is the power of bodhicitta and the related minds, yeah?
Yes, and
if we have some sort of, not necessarily realization, but a really strong feeling and understanding of emptiness, that's even more of a powerful antidote to not have to fall into the lower realms. So really important. So J. Milarepa, that saying, right? It was because of fear of death and impermanence that I went into a mountain retreat, but having seen the nature of my mind, I am not fearful at all. Having seen the emptiness of my mind, I am not fearful at all. So also the understanding of death and impermanence is different from an ordinary point of view and a spiritual point of view. So from the spiritual point of view, those beings are fearing death and impermanence, thinking about like, what could the situation of my next life be? That's why they are fearing death and impermanence. Ordinary people like ourselves, we're fearing death and impermanence, thinking all the things I'm going to lose of this life, right? So it's a totally different way of seeing that.
Yes, So
when we cultivate death and impermanence, it's not like when we talk about the fear of death and impermanence, it's not that kind of fear or anxiety that we have at an ordinary level thinking of this life. It's thinking about like, what's my future destination? What could that possibly be, right? That's the thing that we should be thinking about. And if we don't want to have to worry about this, the glorious Śāntarakṣita had said the freedom of whether one ends up there or not is in one's hands, right? It depends upon our own action, our own endeavor. Yeah, but you know, we now have in our human form, we're able to do something about it. But once in those realms, then that becomes more difficult. So that's something to think about. Yeah. And so it's not to say that in those lower realms that spiritual advancement is impossible, just that it is much more difficult. But when one has a powerful imprint, right? We talked about the Buddha having the being who became the Buddha having this really powerful imprint of compassion. So he was able to give rise to compassion in that hell realm, right?
Oma jibitsi te ta stemma maje ne te jibeje tona kati powa tegre nipa tegre ga tani gawa
Kare
tegre
chenpa ma.
mache ron juba stana ron yo pa tisere sa yorwa ate
So in the Madhyamaka in Entering the Middle Way, it says that now is the time when we have the leisure and the freedom. So do not waste this opportunity. We need to do something about it while we have the freedom.
So we
definitely have the power to be able to stop those things from happening. Rebecca, go ahead. I cannot hear her.
Then they wonder why
Hi, can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you. We can hear you, Rebecca.
Well, first thing I wanted to say to you, Kedrup, that at least in Dharamsala, being given a name by a guru was like absolutely the highest possible compliment. And even if it was fat face, small eyes, big ears, it was like people who had been given a name were ecstatic. So I just wanted you to know that was considered the highest possible compliment, you know. So the fact that you're sort of bread loaf head does not is not negative. So
That's the bomb roti tapu laya di jinlap tapu tsikure karinsa na Dharamsala di lama champo so the ming tapu chik tena tene alepe yapu chik tapu tsiko gire tu. Yeah, no, I just have to say I know that there's like cultural differences and people have different sensitivities, so maybe when people see that, but like you know, I lived many years in India. I am very used to being teased this way. So you don't have to worry about Kedrup's feelings being hurt. Yeah, no, it's all good. It's all good. Geshe and I have been working together for, it's nearly 15 years, believe it or not. So there's a lot of trust there.
Congratulations. Yeah. But the other thing I wanted to say.
Yeah, so Geshe said, like a bomb roti, not that he is a bomb roti.
So the other thing I wanted to ask, and this is very banal, it really is, but in the discussion of the lack of equanimity, you know, and the sort of, I just wondered what to do about social media. I'm here in the United States, so of course we're in a difficult time now being bombarded by social media and computers and phones and all those other things. How does he suggest, you know, handling that? I realize that this is a totally banal question, but it's been very hard on a daily basis to.
I'm not sure it's banal, Rebecca. I think that it's actually pretty timely, and yeah, I mean, that's what you love. I just said to Geshe, I just wanted to say one quick thing to you. Like I've noticed, for example, like one of the main ways that I stay in touch with friends who, you know, from living in many different countries is through Facebook, and many people are leaving that now. So I'm like, do I go to a different platform? Like, how do I? So these are all, really difficult things. And so social media series di sana di Facebook dan Instagram dabochik Rebecca ko arila shugirwa ane dinsang chapsi gi netsu latene kadi ne kandeslagare netsu mangru drogitua konso tsorwa duksha kene nganso tangyum gisem shebo nögi to us. Then also the social media, the Facebook down, so kandes pesha tangores, karinsena kadiene chapsi down news dukshadin so lebne so tangyum tes truk drogere doa. So Geshe said that, you know, it can be a challenge, but to maintain equanimity, one of the things that is really valuable to remember is that this is the nature of samsara. Right? Mm-hmm. There's rising and fallings, there's fluctuations, but ultimately this is and has always been the nature of samsara. So we just have to kind of accept that as the situation while also maintaining in a stable way within us our own convictions and our own ethics.
나주를 자 첨보셔봐 얘는 레도 녀모 월을 가디나 롱지 마토나 가디나 코 단디야메바 아까서와 어따쁘게 언조다 마토 요 말이 생기시잖아요.
So as long as we remain under the control of karma and affliction, we are always going to be encountering these things regardless of the social media or not, right? We're always going to meet with those things. So we need to achieve freedom from that. But in terms of deciding on our own personal engagement, make it a very simple question to yourself. Is my engagement here benefiting sentient beings or not? If it is not benefiting sentient beings, perhaps choose not to engage. But many of Geshe-la's, good Dharma friends have shared with him, and maybe we can take something from this as well, that just seeing the situation of the world, how complicated it is through the television, through the computers or whatever, that can really help us to have more love and compassion for others if we think in the right way. So Geshe said some of his friends think, I could get to the realization of love and compassion just, through what I observe on the television set. So it can also be a valuable tool. Yeah. It's funny what can move us in terms of the sufferings of others. So like you can have somebody who just kind of goes about their daily life and maybe they see people in difficulty, but it doesn't really move them. But if they see something really terrible on the news, on television, they begin to weep because they feel so terrible for the person experiencing it. So, it can be a useful thing as well.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome, Rebecca. Thanks for the question. I imagine it's one that's on quite a few people's minds. Next one, Dave.
Yeah. So next question is, since our childhood, we're attached to love of our mother and make us attached to kind of egotistical dependence, which is hard to get rid of all along our childhood and adolescence and adulthood. It seems like fundamental root of our being. How to make it non-attachment, loving attitude?
Nganzo ama seriadi ama dela tene nganzo kadine ama la tengo giredua tenya dela tene dechak halepe shuk champo yongiredua tene nganzo puku chung chung ne tanda bardu rwa dechak di chigyores nganzo ama tempa di kandis mepa sogores nganzo dechak di pangne amala kandis laugore dechak mepegi jampa kandis kegores.
De hecho, maybe we should pass some that lila would you have was Taina Akason. That de hecho, maybe we should pass and that they don't draw us in just to see now. That Ami Shawat Chibayamba, Kaze, Dano, so not to Kalekali.
Senshin Sui and Gansongama Amains.
Yeah, Shiba, the Mashika, the Kanganya, but that is a dog.
So Geshe-la would recommend a different angle from this. So in the teachings, because it is very difficult to kind of get rid of that sort of attachment aspect of it, because we are so connected and dependent on the mother. So actually what the teachings advise is just take that and use it as a point of expansion. So this is my mother in this lifetime, but just as she is my mother now, any sentient being could have been my mother in any other lifetime and has shown me the same kindness. So I should have love for them all. So it can become more universal in that way. Gawa.
Amatela.
Yeah. So yes, okay, in relation to people close to us like our mother, because of those dependent relationships, there may be a strong feeling of that love
mixed with attachment. But the attachment here, rather than trying to target that somehow, what we try to do is to expand that awareness that all of those beings could have been our mother. And as that love, even tinged by attachment, begins to be expanded to more and more beings, then that attachment becomes less of a problem.
This one, that the Nisa Yawati that Tosona, that Chitsumazo Mujin. The Chagri, the Yamote Kale, Tomaso, the pit top of her living too much time.
So based upon kind of changing the basis for this mind arising, naturally the love becomes more and more refined. And then like the particles of sand, if you set the glass down, the attachment will slowly kind of float to the bottom. The attachment will slowly, naturally start to dissipate.
On this one, but Amalate, what the pet members were read, copy torto, you are to that she members were.
So rather than taking the approach of rejecting that mind of love towards our mother, even if it is mixed in with attachment because of dependence, what Geshe is advising is expanding that mind to include more and more and more and more sentient beings. And in that way, the attachment becomes less and less of a problem.
Suji Tomodovic draw Telta in a Pamado, Karina Kangala, Koroteo Mabado to us. Diana, Tekoro, giving in at the thoughts of that Silly no more pacha, the Umaning as a
So many people are critical of the aspect of Lord Buddha's story, where he left behind his father, mother, wife, and his family to go and cultivate in the forest. But the part of the story that they don't appreciate is, yes, the Buddha did, but they were in good conditions, but he did leave them behind. But then having his realization, having his enlightenment, one of his first tasks was he went back, reconnected with his family, taught them about emptiness and so forth, and they were able to achieve realization.
That Pinjag Nolan Jabozo, Tanga Jabon Deva Madu, Kochapa Maison did Jabon Deva Yamaras, Pinjagenda, Chorasing, that
So there's some in some of the texts about this, when the Buddha kind of returns after his enlightenment, that I guess they asked him to be king again. He said, no, I've given up attachment, so I don't need to be king. So then he said to another one of his cousins, perhaps you should be king. And he said, I've become a foe destroyer, so I don't want to be king. Right. So that is kind of the benefit that he brought to his family. So important. So all of these histories are in the scriptures. We can appreciate these as incidents that actually happened. And so, and so all of those close people to the Buddha got that tremendous benefit. Yeah. So as what you'll find is that as you take the field for that compassion, for that love, and make it broader and broader and broader and broader, the attachment is naturally going to start to be less problematic and start to dissipate.
Oh yeah. Yes.
Okay, I think Geshe has said all he wants to say about that one. Is there another question? I'm not sure who's next, Dave, so I hope you're keeping track. Sorry.
Yeah, Marcy and Laura. I'm not sure who is first.
Yeah, so one of you can go ahead, whoever would like to. Candice. Yeah. So the way our mind works and trying these different ways of thinking about things, it's like watching kind of like a movie, thinking about what's the thing that's going to happen if I do this in our mind. The mind is a constant source of inspiration. It is deep and profound, and there's always further that we can go. So nobody's spoken yet. So go ahead, guys.
I'm trying to find myself on the.
We can hear you now. We can hear you now.
I know, but I can't see myself. I don't know where I went.
Well, because you turned your camera off. So look for the camera icon and click on it again, probably.
Click on video.
Yes, there you are.
Okay. I can't see myself, but okay.
We can see you though. Go ahead.
There we are. Okay. I don't really know how to ask this. And I don't really know exactly, well, I do know kind of what I'm looking for. And I'm wondering if I actually should have an appointment with, rather than, I have a bit of shame about this.
If it feels safe for you to share, please do. If it doesn't feel safe for you to share, like if you've just emailed me in the last day, I probably haven't seen the email yet, but if this is something that you want to ask about by a letter or by a phone call or something, or by Zoom or whatever, if that feels safer for you, then that's absolutely okay. Like, but if you want to share here, you can.
Big question. I'm wondering if I should maybe do both. I don't know.
Do you want to send, I'll check my email. Do you want to send me an email first? And then if you want to share it publicly next class, you can feel free. There's no rush.
Okay. I don't think I have your email.
If you write to the contact email, it will come through to me. Because I do get quite a few emails, I try to look every 2 or 3 days, but if you've written to me, you'll get a response. You will.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I think I thought it was Dave, but okay.
Oh, he'll see it as well. They come, we have a place where both of us can see them. So if that's what you'd like to do, maybe try that first. And then later, if it feels safe to share, please do.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
I've put Kedrup's direct email, like for Lama Yeshe-ling, in the chat. So
yes, you can also write to me there. Yeah. No, and we can talk about it further and decide the best course of action. No problem.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Anybody else?
Go ahead, Laura.
Laura, yeah.
Thank you so much, Geshe. Thank you, Kedrapti. I have a question regarding the practice equalizing myself with the others.
Huh?
Could please Geshe explain the correct way how to practice equalizing myself with the others, because that practice involves the understanding of self. That means I have to know the selflessness of the phenomena in my mind. But in itself, the practice leads to that understanding, because when I read the instructions, it says the practice actually targets the self-cherishing attitude, not the self-grasping.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's kind of, it requires both, but are these two different meditations, or they can be done in one meditation and make it effective in the correct way? Because most of the people think that when I do equalize myself with the others, I'll become the same self, and the others are the same thing, which is not correct. There's like a difference between really practicing that, meditation and actually making mistakes like that. So thank you so much.
Nanzo dagje nyamje di samlo thangna, dagje nyamje samlo thangna roa, dene nganso di dagje nyamje ko dag me dabuchik samlo thangne ine di mares roa, ane yang nganso dag sere di jens sogyo mare, jen soe di dag chagyo mare, nganso dagje nyamje sena a kandes chikres, dag me dang drawa yorebes, matok jen nganso dagje nyamje rang chenzen pangne jen chenzen kea chipores di kandes chikresa.
Mimi da dajin je korado. Ani da ale da karse karta karne se kar. Dajin je korosena.
Yeah.
Ani dajin je korosena. Re da zo da du je pa cha yo mar was ngene chena. Da je cha je da cha me ba da wo. Da me ba da wo chi re da. Ani da ina yo da dajin je sa ta na koro la ya tere ron chin se do. Ye chin ni te na jo ji yo ja ya chi re.
So yes, so this is an important point to clarify. So when we say equalizing and exchanging self and others, because of how that sounds, we think like I'm taking me and making myself to others. I'm taking others and making them to me. So in a way, there's kind of something to that, but that can also lead you in a misdirection. So the simplest way to kind of express it is exactly what you said. The self that you're exchanging is the self-cherishing mind, and the others that you're exchanging with is a mind that cherishes others. So the simplest way of thinking about this is it's a practice where we try to abandon the self-cherishing mind and give rise to the mind that cherishes others. And we see that in our interactions.
다 이나요 다음에 배치 또 토스나 다대 비비 다보도 다대 뭐 유야라 다 좋지 뭐서 그러봤어.
But if we can incorporate selflessness into this picture and use selflessness in conjunction with this practice, Geshe actually thinks that the experience will be more profound. Kandes pesha tangore pelabna? Pechiklamna? Dagme kandes pesha.
Yes, they
Yeah.
다 로지 저 maybe chane 소로 또서나.
Right.
아니 다 로진스 법에서 야라 좋지 뭐도.
So for example, if we think how these categories of self and others exist interdependently, there is not an inherent existence to self or others to point to. That understanding can greatly enhance our diminishing of self-cherishing or an increasing of cherishing others.
로진스 세다 슈 top tempo 용어다 된 저거 주사 로모사 스피리타 침바치 버게 디닐지 주닐 그 주장이 알아봤어.
Self-cherishing really comes from that grasping that there is some sort of pinpointable, findable, truly existent self that is feeling all these things. It is definitely there. It is very much related to that misperception.
어떤 로도지래. 다요 전에 다예 차요 말이에 다 차요 말이야. 따야지요.
So it's very common in the text that it says this is not that self becomes others or others become self, but actually there's one way of thinking that sort of incorporates that concept.
다 요방에 알레 롱가치는 노게 간디스 노게를 잘나비나스.
So if we wanted to explore that line of reasoning a little bit further, how would we do that?
나로서 그 단단 리 사자 첨부서 대한 세컨드 가디나 자 첨부서 등아이 리 자기 되었어.
So how do we feel when we're grasping at ourselves? How does our body look? We think this is my body and I'm protecting and holding on to this body. This is my body. But this body that we're kind of curling up into, that we're holding on to, this body came from our mother and our father, right? It came from the two substances of our mother and our father. So that means it wasn't our stuff. This body arises together from the stuff of our parents, from the reproductive substances of our parents. But we start to identify with this form and we think, my body, my body, my body, and that reification kind of increases and increases and increases. Yeah. And the reproductive substances of our parents, those arise from our parents, but not without causes. So we can think that those reproductive substances are possible only because of the fields of the fruits and vegetables and the other things that they are eating, right? So you can think like that. So if you sort of go about these reasonings, then others becoming self and self becoming others kind of becomes a danger. You start thinking, oh, maybe that's the thing, right? So when you start to think about those reasonings, that kind of switching of those positions of self and others seems like more of a possibility, right? Yeah. So Geshe said, actually, there's a lot that has been written about this, and some of it's very interesting. So he hopes we can share more about that in the future. Yeah. All right. I think we've covered all of our live participants, but Dave, I still see your hand up. So does that mean that we've missed something?
No, we're good.
We're good. Okay. Yeah. All right. So thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. Don't forget next week's special presentation on emptiness. So thank you so much. See you soon. Stay happy, everybody. Take care.